Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. So today we're going to be looking at the 2018 governor elections as of September 15th, 2018. So just a little throwback to September 1st, 2018. This was my prediction for the 2018 governor map. 23 Democrats and 27 Republicans in all of these states. Of course, the blue ones are ones for the Democrats, and then the red ones are the ones for the GOP. But now this map has gotten a little bit more contested in terms of party control, and it does favor the Democratic Party. So there are some new polls from a number of races, and we have a couple of things to be looking at. So first of all, if we look at the Real Clear Politics 2018 governor races map, it's not going to be on your screen, but it is something to mention. The Democrats currently have 20 seats, according to the Real Clear Politics map. Keep in mind, they only have 16 at this point in time. Ones that are going to flip, according to this map, are Illinois, the state of Michigan, Maine, and the state of New Mexico. But pretty much those states are the only states that the Real Clear Politics has said is going to flip. As for the GOP, they only have 22 currently in their column, and 2 of them are leaning, and 5 of them are likely. So in terms of safe states, the Democrats only have 10, and the GOP has 15. But it's still considerable how the Republicans currently have 33 seats, and they only have 22 according to the RCP map, which means that 11 of the races are becoming contested. For the Democrats, they already have 4 of those races in the bag for their parties. So right now, when we look at this map, we do have to start off with some of the states that are going to be pretty similar to what we see here. So first of all, we're starting off with the likely states, and we'll start off with the likely states for the GOP. There are some states that I'm actually going to move over into the safe column in just a second. So South Carolina, South Dakota, those states I'm going to move into the safe column. But other than that, I really don't see any other states that are going to be considered safe. There will be some safe states on your screen right now that will be moved over, possibly actually only one. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. As for the likely states, we'll start off with Tennessee. Has become a little bit more of a likely state, especially with new polling data from that state itself. Let's see, looking over at a couple of other states, you could argue that New Hampshire is a likely state for the GOP. I didn't mean to fill in Vermont at that point. Likely states for the Democrats: Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota. Those states I definitely see being likely, along with Pennsylvania, New Mexico, and Colorado, and Oregon. So I know that's like a huge amount, doing that so fast, so quickly. But for the Rust Belt areas, including the state of Illinois, number one, Illinois and Michigan having 2 unpopular GOP incumbents, Illinois with 1 running, who currently at this point in time has a negative 34% disapproval rating. Obviously not good. The incumbent is not running for re-election in the state of Michigan, so he wouldn't have too much of an impact. But right now, Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota, Pennsylvania are all pretty Democratic states, with the exception of Michigan and Pennsylvania in 2016. But still, when it comes to statewide and local elections, Pennsylvania has 2 Democratic senators, Michigan has 2 Democratic senators, Minnesota has 2 Democratic senators, along with the state of Illinois. We aren't seeing much difference in terms of statewide elections. For governor elections, Minnesota, Illinois both have Democratic governors, but Michigan, along with Minnesota and Pennsylvania both have Democratic governors, but Illinois and Michigan are both expected to flip and be in the column for the Democrats by the same amount. So right now, those states are going to go in the likely column for the Democratic Party. For Oregon, Colorado, New Mexico, Oregon actually is the closest out of the 3, which is very surprising. But I believe by the end of 2018, that state moves into the likely Democratic column. As for a couple other of these states, we do have some states that would be considered likely for the GOP. My home state of Maryland, at this point, is going to be likely for the GOP. The Democratic Party really isn't doing too well, especially in terms of polling, and Larry Hogan's approval rating isn't really dropping. Actually, his approval rating, I believe, is positive. Let's see, positive 51%. So he is currently the second most approved of governor in the United States, right behind Charlie Baker by a mere 1% from the state of Massachusetts. So even as a Republican from Maryland, it's about the candidates at this point in time. So we have a couple of other races to characterize. I would say Connecticut is actually going from the leaning Democratic column, moving into the likely Democratic column. Right now, the current governor in the state of Connecticut has a 21% approval rating. Yes, that is going to hurt the Democrats, but we've seen consistently in a number of polls that have recently come out from the state of Connecticut and fundraising data that it really isn't hurting someone like Ned Lamont. He was a previous candidate for the Senate. I believe he was defeated by Lieberman or Chafee. I believe it was Lieberman, though, because he ran as a Democrat and Chafee was a Republican, and I know a Republican didn't defeat him. Right now, he currently leads by 12.5%, and these are 2 recent polls. They were both taken in August. One shows plus 16, one shows plus 9. Anything above 5 moves in the likely column for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, according to my predictions. So Connecticut moves from leaning Democratic on this map right here to likely Democratic. So that is something to note as well. As for the rest of the map, we do have some areas that are probably going to be, I guess, you could characterize them as they were likely, but now are moving into the leaning column. Kansas is one of them. That one was rated as likely, as you can see on my other map, but it is now moving into the leaning Republican column. New poll comes out from Kansas showing the Democrat ahead by 1%. That's pretty considerable, but it wasn't just that. Also, if we look at the state of Kansas, did I say Connecticut? I meant to say Kansas. But if you look at the state of Kansas itself, it overall is going to be a contested race. Even though the governor is the unpopular governor is no longer the governor, you still have to realize that sometimes incumbents do leave a bad taste in people's mouth, for the same reason why Connecticut is not a safe Democratic state. This race would be a blowout for Democrats if they had a mildly popular or just not severely unpopular governor on the Democratic side. Connecticut wouldn't even be contested at this time. Same thing with Oregon. If their governor who's running for re-election was more popular than they are now, it would be a blowout for the Democrats there. So right now, Kansas, I'm going to move from likely to leaning, along with Oklahoma, which I will keep in the leaning Republican column, because again, Oklahoma is still a Republican state, but also if you look at the approval ratings of the president and comparing to these states, I understand governor elections may not be the first thing to look to lash against the president, but if you remember back in 2014, Maryland and Massachusetts both going to the GOP was something to note, and many people blamed President Obama. So right now, Oklahoma just a little bit more conservative than Kansas at this point in time, especially agreeing with the RCP map, with Kansas actually as a toss-up and Oklahoma as a leaning Republican state. Wouldn't truly make enough sense to have it as a likely state in the state that is currently rated as a toss-up by many. But we don't have too many races yet to characterize. We have a total of 10 races, but some of them can go pretty quickly. So start off with the state of Arizona. That one is actually moving into the likely likely GOP column, and I was very conflicted about this one because I really truly did believe I just sounded like Trump there for a second, but I did believe that this state would be a leaning GOP state. I did think it would narrowly go to the GOP, but new data suggests otherwise. I understand Doug Ducey is not the most popular governor. However, even with a negative 1% approval rating, you have to think about the president there. Donald Trump currently is disapproved more than the governor, and that's not going to help this Senate election because it does have national implications, but many people are going to hold on to this governor. I do think it'll narrowly go over that 5% mark, moving Arizona from leaning to likely. And if you're not watching this point, you won't see the reasoning, and I'll probably have to explain it to someone in the comment section. But still, Arizona, I think, could narrowly edge over that 5% mark, especially with McSally and other Republicans drawing back after the primary has closed off. A new poll from Fox News shows Doug Ducey leading by 11%. That is very considerable against David Garcia, who once led in opinion polls. So the Republicans at 23, but now here's where we're going to have a flip from red to blue. Right now, we look at the state of Iowa. This one goes into the tilt Democratic column. Now, that is pretty considerable. A new poll from Emerson shows the Democrat ahead by 5%. Isn't that something? In a state like Iowa, a pretty Republican state, voted for the president by around 10% in 2016. It's something to note. Iowa used to be a Democratic state in 2008 and 2012, but it has since become a more Republican state. 2 Republican senators, Republican governor, and a Republican presidential win in 2016. But we could likely see an incumbent who wasn't truly a real incumbent in terms of election data. Right now, Iowa going into the tilt Democratic column. That is very considerable. I understand the new poll has many factors that play into the general election, especially with many undecided voters. I'm actually going to read off the numbers to you right now. If we look at the state of Iowa, that new poll from Emerson shows the Democrat winning, but only because the Democrat has, I believe, 36% of the vote compared to 31%. So many undecided voters, but right now Iowa, I think, could narrowly go towards the Democratic Party. Another state I'm flipping from red to blue is the state of Florida. Andrew Gillum has consistently led in new and previous election polling, which is something I didn't catch before. Gillum leads by 6% according to Rasmussen reports. And I'm pointing out a singular poll because many people love to flaunt Rasmussen as the president's approval rating with a 49%, sometimes 48%, sometimes even 50 to 51% approval rating of the president. Many people, including the president himself, takes Rasmussen reports and holds it to the highest standard, has it as the gold standard, and everything else before it below it. So right now, Florida showing the Democrat ahead by 6% from a pollster that typically overestimates the president's approval rating is something to note. So right now, Florida moving from the Republican column in this map over here to the Democratic column, adding another seat to the Democratic Party. As for the state of Maine, that one goes into the leaning Democratic column. Not much explanation there. It's just that race itself likely could flip, especially with the race, especially with no incumbent running on the Republican side. I think that Maine could go back to its Democratic identity from where it was before. As for the state of Nevada, that one goes into the tilt Democratic column for the same reasoning where it was before. I don't believe there's any true new polling. Actually, there is from September that shows Sisolak had by 2%, but that's not like a considerable lead for a long time. The last poll taken before in the state of Nevada was taken all the way back in June. So until we get some more data, we're going to have to keep Nevada in the tilt Democratic column for this period of time. As for the state of Wisconsin, that is a state that currently has Scott Walker. He's running for a third term, but every single poll shows Scott Walker losing in the state. I'm not going to change anything because we don't have any new data to really change and alter this race from where it was before in September, on September 1st. So that one goes into the leaning Democratic column. So we have a couple states to characterize: Georgia, Ohio, and I believe Alaska. You can see the characterizations there. Georgia and Alaska, both Republican states, and then Ohio as a Democratic state. Ohio I'm going to keep narrowly in the Democratic column, again in the tilt column, because again, we don't have too much information from that state to actually make a huge change to this map itself. But for the state of Georgia, we actually will come back to that one because that is a very, very contested race there. As for the state of Alaska, we will go over to that one, and we're going to put that one in the leaning Republican column. Because of the fact that there's a Democrat running and an independent running and a Republican running, I do believe that the Republican will get a plurality and win there very narrowly. I did not characterize Rhode Island. I can't believe I didn't catch that, but Rhode Island actually going into the leaning Democratic column, which is something to note, mainly because the incumbent is only leading by 2% in all opinion polls taken, which gives her a final average of plus 2%. But the state of Georgia itself, this is a very contested race. I'm going to move Georgia into the tilt Republican column from leaning Republican column, mainly because, again, we have new data from the state itself. This race has gotten a lot more contested than where it should be, especially in a Republican state like this, which voted for the president enough to be put in the likely column. Overall, Georgia really shouldn't be a race. It is the GOP's race to lose, and so far, they're not doing too well. So compare the map to where it was before. The Democrats did improve in some states. The GOP did improve in others. But overall, general conclusion is that the Democrats did gain in a couple of states, Iowa and Florida to be exact. So from 23 seats to the Democrats to 27 Republicans down to 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans, an exact tie. It is something to be pointed out. So as of September 15th, 2018, an exact tie in the National Governors Association. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I'll see you all tomorrow.